I think that if you look at pretty much everything connected to Silent Hill that wasn't made by the original Team Silent, I think that they all suffer from a lot of the same flaws and mistakes. And I think that these flaws and mistakes are a result of not understanding the series and not understanding what makes it special. And I think you're seeing this play out in real time as the Silent Hill Ascension game plays out. If you're unaware, then Silent Hill Ascension is basically a Twitch plays Silent Hill kind of thing, where they're just playing video clips of the game and then you vote on choices. There is one game happening, aka there's one show happening that everyone is watching together and people are voting on choices together. So it's not really a game. At least I am hesitant to call it a game. But regardless, Silent Hill Ascension has not been received well, and there have been some great memes to come out of it, such as the "It's Trauma" sticker, which just, I don't know, I can't take it seriously because it's so funny to me that someone would look at Silent Hill and then be like, what do these players want? Yeah, they want a big sticker that says "It's Trauma." Like, I don't see how you could make that and not realize that you're doing something stupid, unless it's all just one big joke, but I don't know if it is. And I think a lot of people in general just don't understand Silent Hill, because Silent Hill 2 is the most popular game in the series, but at the same time it probably isn't the most representative of what the series is actually about. And I think that's a weird idea to think about, that the most popular thing isn't necessarily the best representative of the series as a whole. I think you see it a lot with bands. You know, their hit song is actually something that doesn't resemble their normal style, and so I think that's kind of what's happened with Silent Hill. Of course, I don't mean to imply that Silent Hill 2 is not a Silent Hill game or some crazy BS like that, because it 100% is a Silent Hill game. It's just a different kind of Silent Hill. And so really with this video, I hope to give kind of a bigger overview of how I see the series, and again, what makes it special. What makes Silent Hill, as opposed to just some other horror series. So as I was saying, Silent Hill 2 is probably not the most representative of the series as a whole. The first 4 Silent Hill games were all made by Team Silent. And contrary to their name, Team Silent wasn't a set team. It wasn't a set group of people. Different people came, different people went, but really there are individuals who worked on multiple games. So Masahiro Ito is one guy, Akira Yamaoka is another. I think that having some of the same people work on the same games helped keep the series somewhat cohesive. But as I said, I feel like Silent Hill 2 is kind of an outlier in the series. And the reason why is because the first game, the third game, and the fourth game are all about the cult. Silent Hill 2 is about James Sunderland. It's about him coping with the death of his wife and struggling with that loss. Silent Hill 1 is about a man trying to get his baby back, and the baby is actually half of a girl's soul, which has been split in a magic ritual, and it's kind of a mess. It's kind of hard to understand. Silent Hill 3 is a continuation of that. Silent Hill 4, which I did an entire video about, is about a man who wants to be united with his mother, his mother is an apartment room, and also the man is a serial killer. It's a weird game. And so whenever I'm presenting the games as being weird, whenever I'm presenting 1, 3, and 4 as just being kind of off the wall compared to 2, I don't think that's a gross simplification. I don't think that I'm wrong in doing that. I think that they are just different games than the second game. But again, Silent Hill 2 is the most popular game in the series. It has the most popular monster in the form of Pyramid Head. Now, all of the games in the series are considered psychological horror, which that in itself makes Silent Hill special, because this is not Resident Evil. In Resident Evil, the horror is more body horror. It's more just kind of, there's a monster in the house and we're trying to kill it, because that's really what Resident Evil is it's like there's something evil and it is in our residence, and so we're trying to kill it. It's in the freaking name. Resident Evil is a series that's about the most basic, simple, primitive kind of horror, I think, which is just, there is something coming to get me and I have to defend myself. That's all it is. But then Silent Hill is typically someone struggling with something deeper. It's typically someone struggling with something darker, or more sinister, or weirder, which is kind of the series defining trait. Again, the first and the third game are about a girl who splits her soul in half. And the fourth game is about a guy who believes his mom is a room. I replayed the first Silent Hill game in preparation for this video, and it actually challenged a lot of my ideas about what Silent Hill is and what it should be, which is crazy because it's the first Silent Hill game. But whenever we talk about Silent Hill, too often I think we only focus on the second game because it's the most popular one. And I think that it's normal for something popular to kind of define something larger. I think it makes perfect sense that it's like, hey, if this is what people actually like, then let's do more crap like it. But I think that one of the major reasons why the series has kind of failed ever since it stopped being developed by Team Silent, and I do think that the series has been composed of mostly failures, I think it's because the developers seemingly don't get what makes Silent Hill special, and they don't understand how weirdness works. Because the thing about weirdness is that something is only weird once, and then you see it, and then it's normal. At one point, Frankenstein was weird. At one point, vampires were weird, or werewolves, or mummies, or zombies. But at this point, we've been exposed to these things so many times that they're just kind of rote. They're familiar, and so they are no longer weird, even though they once were weird. And so I think you see that happen with Silent Hill. The first game is very strange. It's very uncanny, and it's very I don't know, there's something special about it. The game has a unique atmosphere because it's very aggressive, it's very in your face. And you can tell that by the enemies because the enemies are really fast. I feel like they're some of the fastest in the series. One of the most common enemies in the first game is this pterodactyl type creature, and it's just so annoying, and it's always in your face, just all the time. It's just chasing you around, and it's so annoying. And the environments are in your face. It's like, oh, here are some corpses. Oh, here is this bloody, rusty door or something. And it's a game that strives to be weird in everything. And it's like, here, we're gonna have these alchemical symbols flash upon TV screens in the mall. And so I think Silent Hill 1 is playing around with a lot of real unique and interesting themes that I haven't seen quite done before or since in a horror game. And then also I think it just wants to be weird, just flat out. If this wasn't the case, then explain to me the symbolic significance of why there's a key inside a packet of jelly beans in the first game. It's like, what do jelly beans have to do with the game? And it's like, they have nothing to do with the game. It's a packet of jelly beans and it's just weird. Or it's like in the third game where she finds a key in a can of soda, and it's like, it's weird, it's strange. There isn't any deeper meaning to a packet of jelly beans or to a soda can. And so I think the problem with a lot of Silent Hill media post Team Silent games is that they just kind of feature stuff that is familiar because we've seen it before, like Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head is the mascot of the series. Again, he is the most famous monster in the series, but he was a monster that was kind of specifically designed for James. He is a monster that plays a role in the story of Silent Hill 2, and that's it, or it should have been it. Pyramid Head didn't need to show up in Silent Hill Homecoming, but even if he's not Pyramid Head, even if he's just someone that's similar to Pyramid Head, it's like, you look at it and it's like, I've seen this before. The thing about something being weird or something being strange is that it has to be new. The concept of weirdness and newness are inherently tied together. If you had a neighbor and he wore all his clothes backwards, you would be like, that's kind of weird, that's eccentric. And you would be like that for the first time you saw him like that. But then the 57th time you saw it, you would just be like, yeah, he's whatever. That's his thing. It would be normal to you is what I'm trying to say. And so I think strangeness or the weird is something that's incredibly difficult to capture because of that fact, because of the fact that it has to be new every single time. So in that sense, just following that logic, each Silent Hill game should have a different aesthetic. Each Silent Hill game should have a different set of monsters, a different protagonist. Each Silent Hill game should have something different to separate it and make it special. So let's take this idea and apply it to the Team Silent games, right? Because the first game, the third game, and the fourth game all had the Cult as the main villains. I call them the Cult, but their name is actually the Order, not the 80s goth band. And so I think that Team Silent was kind of at risk of the Cult becoming routine. But the thing is, I don't really know that it ever does. And the reason why the Cult never really feels all that familiar to me is because it's constantly changing. The characters, the people in the Order who you see are different in each game. There's that aspect of it, but then also the Order itself seems to be split into different sects, or at least people have different ideas. Leonard has different ideas than Claudia, and those two have different ideas from Walter Sullivan. And so I think you can play around in the same sandbox while still presenting things that are strange. I think that in very simple terms, Harry in Silent Hill 1 kind of explains what Silent Hill is, or what it should be.
This whole town, it's being invaded by the other world. By world of someone's nightmarish delusions come to life.
Someone's nightmarish delusions come to life, right? So each game is kind of focused on a character and the enemies are kind of built around them in the original Team Silent games. So in the second game in the series, he plays James Sunderland and all of the monsters and environments have to do with him. The entire game, since he's the protagonist, is built up around him. But that's not exactly the case with the first game, because Harry Mason is the protagonist and he just kind of wants his daughter back. He doesn't really know anything about the Order or about the weird rituals they're doing. He's just kind of someone who got involved, but he's not the reason for the enemies in the town. The enemies in the town and the town itself is all a reflection of Alessa. In Silent Hill 4, everything is kind of a reflection of Walter Sullivan. So I think you have that real psychological connection in the other games. I think that one thing that goes overlooked a little bit when discussing Silent Hill, minus the second game, is the emotional core of each game. Because everyone knows that Silent Hill 2 is a deeply emotional game. Everyone knows that whenever you play Silent Hill 2, it's depressing and it's sad and it leaves you feeling empty and hollow. In spite of its strangeness and its weirdness and those aspects potentially overshadowing the emotional elements, I still think that there are emotional cores to 1, 3, and 4. I think that the thing that connects all 4 Team Silent games, and even like Homecoming, for instance, or Shattered Memories, or Downpour, or any of the other Silent Hill games, is kind of the need and desire for love. And that's a weird thing because love isn't typically what we think about when we think about Silent Hill. But I would argue that in Silent Hill 1, Alessa just wants to be loved.
Oh, but Mommy, I just want to be with you.
And Harry wants to love his daughter. In Silent Hill 2, James just wants a good relationship with his wife. He probably didn't want their love to be interrupted by her sickness.
Mary?
What do you want, James?
I brought you some flowers.
In Silent Hill 3, Heather is first driven to go to Silent Hill just because she wants to get revenge on Claudia for killing her dad, because Heather loves her dad. And then in Silent Hill 4, Walter Sullivan wants to be reunited with the Room, who he believes is his mother, who will care for him and whatever else. In Silent Hill Homecoming, Alex just wants to be loved by his family as opposed to having all the love given to his brother. Shattered Memories has kind of a really sad twist ending that's more or less that character wanting to be loved. And so I think that these kinds of emotions that these games are based around really kind of separate it from Resident Evil, which again is like, there's a monster here, let's kill it. Right? Resident Evil is meant to be cool. Resident Evil is meant to be flashy. The first Devil May Cry game was intended to be a Resident Evil game. And I think that its emphasis on coolness is kind of cranked up to 11, but I think even that supports the fact that Resident Evil is supposed to be cool. Whenever you look at anything that Leon does or says, it's supposed to be cool. You're supposed to be like, wow, what a cool guy. In Resident Evil 5, Chris punching a boulder in a volcano is stupid, and that's why it's funny. But it's supposed to be cool. You're supposed to be like, oh man, this big action hero, he's so strong and he's gonna save the world and he's gonna defeat Wesker. Look at how cool he is. Or each Resident Evil game ends with a big monster being blown up by a rocket launcher. Or I think in Resident Evil 3, Jill has like a laser cannon or something stupid. But Silent Hill isn't like that. Silent Hill is just about a bunch of schmucks, right? It's a bunch of average Joes. It's about a bunch of just normal people. It's not supposed to be cool. Silent Hill should not be cool. I said this in another video, but I remember seeing once that Silent Hill was described as Resident Evil's artsy sister, and that description has kind of just stuck with me. At the risk of sounding pretentious, I kind of feel like Resident Evil is just silly blockbuster action, whereas Silent Hill should aspire to be something higher. It should aspire to be something smarter and more intelligent and more thoughtful. And again, I don't mean to sound pretentious, but this series probably comes off as pretentious a little bit to people who aren't already indoctrinated into it like I am. And I think that it's important to not have that facade or patina of coolness. And the reason why is because I think it probably helps to establish that deeper emotional connection with the player. This is a point that I think is debatable. I think you could probably debate it either way, but I think that if a character is probably closer to the average player, I think that it will probably be easier for people to empathize with them. And I think that at its best, that can cause people to really reflect on themselves, and it can cause people to see their own character traits in a character like James, and it can cause them to go, man, if I was in this situation, what would I do? Whereas with Resident Evil, it's like, hey man, if there was a zombie invasion, then I don't know, man, I would probably try to shoot everyone. By the way, if it's not clear, I freaking love Resident Evil, and I've made several videos about the series, and I love it. It's just that I think that Silent Hill should be distinct from Resident Evil. I think that they should be two flavors of horror. They're not the same thing, they shouldn't be the same thing, and so I think it's important to recognize what makes each series each series. I think that it's really important also that the characters are lame or uncool or losers or whatever in Silent Hill, because it allows them to be uncertain. That's an idea that kind of appeared, and then the more I look for it, the more I see it in these different Silent Hill games. Characters are always uncertain about themselves or about the world that they are in.
So maybe you can tell me what's going on.
I really can't say.
What's so special about you anyway?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be so confused, would I?
Characters don't really know how they got into the situation that they're in. Characters are confused, they're baffled, they're in a daze. Characters aren't sure if what they believe is actually true. Characters aren't sure if they're seeing the same thing as everyone else. I think that helps to contribute to the feeling of weirdness, but I also think that it causes the characters to be a little bit more relatable, because honestly, who doesn't doubt themselves? And it's like, oh, Chris Redfield doesn't doubt himself whenever he's just gonna go and raid Ethan's house. And he should have explained the plan to Ethan, but he didn't in Resident Evil Village. If you haven't played that game, that's fine, just ignore this. But the characters in Silent Hill really kind of question everything. They question their reality and their understanding of it. And I think that's really special, because I think that it's comforting. I made a video about how horror can be comforting, and I think that the same ideas apply here. I think that the confusion helps to make the characters more relatable, and I think that it helps to reinforce that strangeness. It helps to reinforce that weirdness, because it's not like Resident Evil where you look at a monster and you go, oh hey, this is a zombie, this is a licker, this is a tyrant, I've fought this before. In Silent Hill, it's more like, oh gross, what is this? I don't know what this is, but it's gross and it makes me feel bad inside when I look at it, and I don't know what it is. So I think going back to the idea of Silent Hill 2 being its own thing, Silent Hill 2 is really a story about a man coming to terms with the death of his wife. And so that's why Silent Hill 3 ended up being a return to the first game, was specifically as a response to fan, maybe not backlash, but certainly fan criticism. And so Silent Hill 2, even if you don't know crap about Silent Hill 2 is probably a game that you've still heard of. Maybe if you're not familiar with it, you at least know Pyramid Head. And I think there are many reasons why it's so beloved. First off, it's just a wonderful game. I think that it's probably the best horror game ever made, but also you just don't need to know anything else about the series to get into it. I think that in the first game, the psychological elements are all there. I think all the symbolism is there, but at the same time, I think that it was buried underneath a layer of strangeness. I don't think that the symbolism was as in your face as it maybe is in the second game. And when I say symbolism, I mean what the enemies represent. I mean what the design of an enemy is supposed to say about the character, or the way that characters interact with the world, the way that characters see different locations. I think that even some of the puzzles, probably not all, but I think that some of the puzzles certainly reveal something about James in the second Silent Hill game. And so I think that these are some of the reasons why people gravitate towards the second game, and I think that just because the second game is so beloved, because it's so successful at this point, that is why every American or Western made Silent Hill game has tried to ape Silent Hill 2. It feels like every game after the Team Silent games has tried to have some kind of twist about the main character. It's tried to have some kind of revelation or something shocking, just because Silent Hill 2 did that. But the thing is, you don't have to do that. I don't think your protagonist has to be someone who has done some morally gray or questionable things. You know, if you look at the first game, Harry Mason is just a great guy. Like, overall, he just wants to find his daughter, and he's just, he might be a little weird because he found a baby on the side of the road and adopted it, but I think he has a good heart. But also, I don't think that the Silent Hill games have to be about the cult. If you don't like the Order, then I don't think you have to feature them in your Silent Hill game. But I think that me saying all this kind of begs the question, if you're saying that Silent Hill 2 doesn't need to be a blueprint for all Silent Hill games going forward, and you're saying that neither do the other Team Silent games, then what should Silent Hill be? What should the blueprint be for games going forward in the future? And I think that's kind of the thing, is I don't think that you need one. Honestly, I think you can do pretty much anything with Silent Hill. It doesn't even have to be set in Silent Hill, because Silent Hill 4 mostly wasn't set in Silent Hill. Half of Silent Hill 3 wasn't set in Silent Hill. They have a Silent Hill game called Silent Hill F coming out, which I think is set in like 1960s Japan. So honestly, in spite of the series being called Silent Hill, I don't think that you actually need it to be set in Silent Hill. I don't think you need a Silent Hill game to be set around the same areas that we've visited before. I think it's fun. I really like the town of Silent Hill, but I don't think you have to do that. Really, more than anything else, I think that it just needs to have the characteristics I've discussed. I think that it needs to be weird. I think it needs to be smart and trying to do something interesting. Even if it fails and falls into being pretentious, I think that's probably a step in the right direction. I think that trying to do something more intelligent is better than just trying to do something stupid. I think that trying to do something more thoughtful is better than just trying to have a game where it's like, oh yeah, let's just fight enemies, just kill them, that's the horror. It's scary because you're fighting guys who look kind of scary, or at least they looked scary the first time you saw them, but now that you've seen them 500 times, they're not scary. And so really I'm saying something kind of crazy here. I'm saying something that I don't know if people will resonate with. I'm saying that for a Silent Hill game to be a Silent Hill game, I'm saying that it doesn't need to be anything like the other Silent Hill games. I think that if you do something strange, if you do something weird, something thoughtful, I think that it will pay off. I think it'll work out. And that to me is what Silent Hill should be. I think that if you wanted to, you could use Silent Hill as a platform to write about social issues or to write about concerns that you're having with the world. And the reason I say that is because that's kind of what Silent Hill 2 was about. Yeah, it's about James struggling with the death of his wife, but it's really kind of about relationships as a whole, I think. It's about some of the mixed feelings that relationships can bring up. I think that if you have something to say, I think that if you have a struggle or a concern that's based in the real world, I think that's a really good thing to bring into Silent Hill. Or if you just want to write something strange, if you just want to write something weird, if you're interested in psychology or alchemy, if you're interested in mythology or symbology or whatever, I think that you can bring it into Silent Hill and you can do something weird with that. I think you can do something cool with that because you already have the basis for that in Silent Hill 1. I think that if you want to write something that's in the same vein as Silent Hill 4, where it's just like, yeah, there's a serial killer who thinks that an apartment room is his mom, I think you can do something. And so really, at the end of the day, I think that Silent Hill is a lot of things. I think it can be more things. I think that's what makes it hard for a good Silent Hill game to come out. I think it really says a lot that Shattered Memories is probably the best Western-made Silent Hill game, and it's the least like the other Silent Hill games. It just does a lot of things that are completely different, and it stumbles in certain places. It's not perfect by any means, but I think it's definitely the best attempt at a Silent Hill game since The Room. You know, that game's really interesting because its aesthetic completely dropped a lot of the gore and a lot of the blood and rust that most of the other games have, because it's just about ice. Everything is frozen over. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't find it that scary. I just don't think that Shattered Memories is that scary of a game, so I don't think it's an effective horror title. But as a story experience, I think it's really strong, and I think it's an enjoyable game overall because it has new ideas. But I think it really says a lot that that's probably the best Western-made game, and it is the least like the other games. And so I think that sticking to something familiar is death. I think that stagnation is death. And I think that's what killed the series off the first time, and I'm happy to see that the series is kind of pushing into some new directions, at least with Silent Hill F. People have high hopes for the Silent Hill 2 remake. I don't really know how that's going to turn out, because I thought that the Resident Evil 4 remake would be trash. I thought the Dead Space remake would be trash, and both of those games are freaking fantastic. So I'm 0 for 2 on that, so we will see how the Silent Hill 2 remake shapes up. But I think that no matter how good that game is, I don't think it will ever give you the same feelings that you had the first time when you played it. And the reason why is because, again, Silent Hill 2 is not new. Silent Hill 2 is not fresh, and therefore I don't think it can be weird. And so I think that no matter how good that game is, and I really hope it's good, I really, really hope it's great, but I think that no matter how good it is, I don't think that it will give you the same feelings that you had when you first played Silent Hill 2. I honestly think that the best Silent Hill game since like Silent Hill 2 is probably Signalis. And I think it's wrong to call that game a Silent Hill game just because I think that game is just something else. I think it's just something new and fresh, and that's why I love it. So if you haven't played Signalis, go check it out, because it gave me a lot of the same feelings that I would love to see in a modern Silent Hill game, which is to say that it surprised me, it shocked me, I actually found it spooky and strange, and I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't understand it. I think that the confusion is the point. I think that the confusion is special. And so I think those are some of the feelings that you want when you're playing Silent Hill. And so really, I think that these are some of the things that make Silent Hill Silent Hill. I'm not saying this is everything about Silent Hill. I'm not saying that this is everything about what makes Silent Hill great. I think that you could write essays and essays about that. I've made several videos on this channel about Silent Hill, and I'm going to make more because I love the series. I think that the first 4 games are really special. I think they're really brilliant. And so I really hope that as we see more Silent Hill games, as we see new Silent Hill games, I really hope that they learn some lessons from the first few games, and I hope that they learn from the mistakes of previous games, of the games that were not made by Team Silent, and even the mistakes of Silent Hill 4, which is a game I love, but it does some weird stuff. So really, I love the series, and I want it to be weird again. I want it to be strange again. I want to be excited by the prospect of a new Silent Hill game. So I think that these are some of the things that make Silent Hill special. So thank you for watching. Check out my other Silent Hill videos if you want. Leave some comments, share your thoughts. Let me know what you think. So thank you for watching. Have a wonderful night. So see ya.